Hey guys, welcome back to another segment of Agree to Disagree, A2D. As always, I'm Michael. I'm here with Bryan. Man, we had to come on to an emergency session here because we've have a little bit of a discussion about how to draft a flex, and we went through our running backs and receiver rankings, and we started this show about a year ago. Because we draft differently, we go about fantasy differently. That's the whole point of the show. So when we start to have these texts, we're like, hey man, shoot up the podcast, let's get this going. So guys, this is going to be about how to draft a flex, or your draft strategy when it comes to flexes. I think one way and BT thinks another. BT, right off the bat, man, like, why don't you go ahead and tell guys, like, how do you draft your flex? Like, what is your thought process come when you draft a flex?
For me, bro, it's pretty simple. It's get the best running back or wide receiver that you can get that isn't your RB one or two or a wide receiver one, two, or three. Because for us, that's in a wide receiver three league that you have three wide receivers in your starting lineup. You need that fourth, and you need that third running back. Honestly, fourth running back because it's the thinnest position in fantasy. So for me, ideally, honestly, I get my flex and I get it pretty quick. I tend to get my flex wrapped up within my first 7 rounds. I don't like waiting around for it. You need depth at running back. So last year for me, I had Kareem Hunt as my flex. I think that's a pretty solid flex option. In one of my leagues, my other league, I ended up having Antonio Brown for a little while whenever he was healthy. So like guys that you can get that are productive, that are high usage guys, but you got to get them early. And to do that, for me, you got to wait on quarterbacks. You might have to wait on tight ends, but it'll be worth it. You can get those guys later for me, like we talked about in our draft strategies. But for flex strategy, that's mine, dude, is to get it knocked out of the way early. Get someone you can trust.
Yeah, now we probably should have mentioned this off the top. Some leagues, like in our league, you mentioned we have three wide receivers, two running backs, and a flex position. So you wanted to go ahead and knock out your flex, semi early in your draft instead of start, doing your value picks. I always schedule my draft kind of, I want to go round by round, and I want to look. There's some times where that you bust, your strategy draft, and like some guy falls to you in like the fourth round that should have got drafted in the second, something like that, and you kind of have to adjust. But I draft for my flex, so I'm always. You mentioned Kareem Hunt, like this year. In my opinion, he's like the ultimate flex guy. Like you had him in your top running back rankings. I think you had him like 17, somewhere around there. I had him outside of my top 25, but in my list, I have him as my top flex option. Reason being, he's going to get work. He's going to be there. So I would draft him not as my RB2 or my RB1, even if I go receiver or something like that first, but I would actually draft him in the fourth round like with everything, with my intention to be putting in my flex spot. So some people don't do that. Some people, put their fourth best receiver in their flex spot, which I'm a big fan of putting receiver in flex spot. Our league, you can also put tight ends in a flex spot. That's really risky because you're really banking on somebody, going off at tight end that week.
Yeah, unless you got Kittle and Kelsey or Kittle and Waller or Andrews and, Gasecki, some crazy combination, you don't really do that. You can get flex guys that are going to outproduce tight ends.
Yeah. So, I
Sorry.
mean, no, that's all right. And then, so I know some guys did that last year, and you can kind of tell that's how they were drafting was with the intention to put a tight end in their flex spot. Like you said, unless if you have a top, like two of the
And
top
some
five
people
or
kind
six
of do
tight
that.
ends.
Like in my other league, I had a guy that actually did that, and the strategy behind that is to take away a thin position. If you get two of the thinnest, that's probably the thinnest position is tight end, honestly, in
Mm-hmm.
fantasy. So if you can get two of the top dogs, then you're leaving the other guys with some scraps, kind of. So that was kind of his strategy on that. I think he ended up trading one of them too. So you always have
Mm-hmm.
that trade bait, also.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not doing it. That ain't me. That's for
yeah,
sure.
we're
I'm waiting on my tight end.
yeah, our tight ends. I mean, obviously, we're going to get tight ends here in a couple weeks here because they are a little bit thinner, but they're one of the more. I mean, the only reason that they're important, like you just mentioned, is because they're thin. So, but there's a lot of sleeper tight ends. I mean, if you can get 10 out of your tight end, you're probably happy, right? So, I'm not a big fan of putting him in my flex. I actually am a big fan of putting in, I call them flex backs. So either a wide receiver or somebody like a Kareem Hunt or somebody like a JD McKissick or somebody, like these flex guys that, Chase Edmonds, who's going to get, James White. Dude, I love James White. You know how I feel about James White. Ultimate flex back for 3 or 4 years with Tommy. So, I that's how I draft my flex. And, there's times where I'll go up, I'll draft all my receivers, I'll draft all my running backs because my flex guy is going to be, like last year, Chase Edmonds in like the 7th, 8th round or something like that. But there's times where, hey, maybe I want to jump up and grab a Kareem Hunt. Maybe I grab Chubb in the 2nd round and I grab Hunt right behind him in the 3rd or 4th round. You play both of them. And some people don't like that strategy, but Kareem Hunt is a flex back until Nick Chubb gets hurt, and then he's a RB1. So that's how I like to jump up, and actually my draft strategy is based on where I like my guys and where I value them. Now is, off the top of my head, is JD McKissick a 6th round pick? Probably not.
Hell no.
Probably not. Is he a 7th round pick? Probably not. But if I've already fulfilled my entire roster, I'm trying to get the most points I possibly can. Unless if there's a receiver there that has fallen, or like a really, really high value pick, I'm going to go out and I'm going to draft for my flex somebody who is going to get all the 3rd down work, somebody who's going to get all the 2-minute warning work or 2-minute drill work.
I like Chase Edmonds. You mentioned him a little bit ago. I liked him. I didn't have him on my top running back rankings. And honestly, let me look at it real quick. I don't even have – oh, yeah, I do have him on my next tier. So I have him, Tony Pollard for the Cowboys. I have him on here too, Miles Sanders. I have a couple guys that weren't in my top 25 that I would consider as my flex. But I like what you're saying because the pass-catching kind of guys, because you need – it's just PPR, you need those points. I was thinking like a Hunter Renfrow. I actually just did a mock, and he fell a little bit in the mock draft I did. And if you can get him as because he's a pass catching machine, so if you can get someone like him as your flex, that'd be pretty good too.
One of my top receivers this year that's, you're already into mocks. I kind of wait on mocks a little bit, but one of my top receivers for a flex spot this year would be a guy like Adam Thielen. And he's somebody that you can put with even if you draft Justin Jefferson, hell, even if you draft Cook and Jefferson. I mean, somehow, if you were to do something like that, you could still go out and get Thielen because those are the 3 guys that are going to score on Minnesota. If you're looking at a team like Cincinnati, we talked about on our receiver rankings, you already have Jamar Chase. Well, you could actually go out and get Tyler Boyd as your flex receiver because he's still going to be their possession guy. He still gets.
That's a good idea, and he could handcuff because God forbid anything happens to Jamar, and all of a sudden Tyler Boyd's your wide receiver 2 or 3, and then he elevates big time for sure.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
And Tyler Boyd's one of my boys too. Like I talk him up every year. I actually made the stupidest bet last year. We're not going to talk about, but I like Tyler Boyd. He's one of those possession guys that you can go out and you can feel comfortable with him getting you. He might not get you 30 points every week, but in rounds 7 through 10, you're looking for just double-digit guys that might get you 18, might get you 20. That's where you're looking at round 7 through 10, and those are your league winners. If in round 4 this year for me, if Kareem Hunt's in there in round 4, even if I already have 3 running backs, I'm probably going to draft Kareem Hunt, because it's just one of those things. I could probably make a trade for a receiver later. Like some receivers always come up where you're like, hey, that guy came out of nowhere. You can get him off waivers. Guys fuck up throughout the year.
4 in a row. You're not drafting 4 running backs in a row.
I won't. I know I won't. I might draft 3 in a row. No, I won't draft 4 in a row. But my point is like receiver is one of those positions that guys will overreact on certain things every year too. So there's going to come a point to where guys are going to say, hey, like last year for me, it was Bryan Ayuk. I overreacted a little bit. I drafted him high. I was expecting him to, and he shit the bed for the first couple of weeks. Well, then I either benched him or I dropped him. And then he started coming around, scoring 12, 15 points. You don't want to drop guys like that unless if you absolutely fucking have to. Well, I overreacted. I got pissed off. I was like, fuck this guy. And I let him go. And then he started coming around a little bit. He had his games where he definitely came around. receivers is like that more than running back, right? I mean, that's kind of how running backs are a
This
little bit
is a
more
deeper
premium.
position, so it's easier to find. You mentioned a Tyler Boyd. I did a mock and he was so far down, dude. Like you can get him late, so that's a good one. Even Chase Edmonds, like we mentioned a little bit ago, that's way late. Michael Carter, because Brees Hall is getting all the attention for the Jets as their guy. Michael Carter had a decent year last year. I think he was a rookie, so he's a good pass catching running back for the Jets. So he's another potential sleeping flex guy you can get down the road that might be pretty safe, because they're going to be losing, they're going to be throwing. So it depends, it really depends on, like, I like to, those are guys I don't like to rely on. There's a James Cook from Buffalo. He's probably a nice flexer for you, I'm
Mhm.
sure. We'll talk
He's
about more him in the sleepers or what.
Yeah, he's my sleeper. I mean, sleeper slash. I mean, people know about James Cook, so I'm not gonna sit here and say he's like the ultimate sleeper, but he definitely is a guy that I'm really really high on. I'm gonna draft as somebody that you could, like you said, somebody you can put in your flex spot, but I'm gonna draft him for my bench to kind of look the first week or week 1 through 4, see how he produces. If he's consistent, with 10, 12, 14 points and he's getting the ball, yeah, he's somebody that you can even bump up into your flex spot or your RB2 spot based on how you drafted. Make a trade, with one of your higher backs that you get something in return that you're hurting on, quarterback or tight end or something like that. But yeah, James Cook's a good one too, man. I don't want to talk about him too much. I don't want people's
Yeah,
ears
no,
burning, but
it depends. Like we all have our different ways of going about the flex. For me, these guys that we're kind of getting into now, I feel like are more in the sleeper category for me. My flex, I see up on my list here, I got Elijah Mitchell, AJ Dillon, Cordell Patterson. These are guys that I would draft a little earlier. I'm not going to push up, any of those guys like a Chase Edmonds. I'm not pushing him up the board. JD McKissick got a shout out. I'm not pushing him up the board. I'm not pushing anybody up the board. Honestly, that's not how I draft. We just kind of talked about it. Like at the end of the day, you have to get the best player at that time when you're picking.
mm,
Ideally, I don't like to draft quarterbacks, but if I'm in the 5th round and Josh Allen is there and the next best running back is AJ Dillon, I'm not going to draft AJ Dillon over Josh Allen.
yeah, I mean,
So
in those
at some point in
specific,
time, you're gonna just take the best guy on the board.
oh yeah, dude, in those specific cases, I mean, if you're QB1 in the 5th round, I mean, and you need a quarterback still, obviously he's the quarterback one, and you're in your,
Even
back
like a
30.
quarterback 3, like a Justin Herbert, maybe. Do you take him over an AJ Dillon at that time, and then maybe take a flyer on like a Chase Edmonds a little later? That's a good idea right there. So
The
it,
only
it depends
reason
where you're picking from and who's on the board.
Yeah, the only reason, I mean, does depend on how the draft plays out. Like I said earlier, if people are falling to you, because I mean, Josh Allen, I mean, I have draft grades for everybody, like where I'm comfortable drafting them. And if I'm in the 4th round and I don't know, I can't really think of a name right off the top. Uh, David Montgomery. If I'm in the 4th round and David Montgomery sitting there in the 4th, 5th round, yeah, I'm going to highly contemplate drafting him, even though like he's not one of the running backs I'm extremely high on. But I mean, that's a great draft value in that round. He's probably going to have a round 4 draft grade for me. So um, Josh Allen's going to have, he's quarterback 1. Do I like to draft quarterbacks before round 5? No, I don't. But he's going to have a late 3, high 4 draft grade for me because he's Josh Allen. He's going to score you 20 plus points every single week, and he can maximize your point value. But it's going to depend on how you draft those first couple rounds too. If you don't already have a receiver by that time, yeah, you're going to want to go receiver. But going back into the flex talk here, like in like round 6 and 7, depending on how you've already drafted, if you've already gotten your 2 running backs, which by round 6, if you don't have 2 running backs by round 6, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for the donation.
Yeah. Have a nice year. You better pray a James Robinson comes out or something like that because you are not going to win with 2 running backs before round 6. If you don't have 2 receivers by round 6. So if you're one of those guys who likes to draft tight end, Travis Kelce in the 1st round, Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd round, just so you can have that stack, again, thank you for your donation. Thank you for coming out. Just because these guys are going to score points does not, you need to maximize your value at the time of the draft. So in round 6 and 7 is kind of where I start to look at my top flex guys and who I have left to maximize my point value, because I already probably have two receivers, at least two receivers. I already have my two running backs, three running backs. So in round 6, I'm probably looking to draft my flex. And in that position, if you can get a guy, maybe not JD McKissick, but if you can get a guy like an Adam Thielen, to me, yeah, he might have an 8th grade or an 8th round draft grade this year. But if you want to jump up in the 6th or 7th round to get him, he is a guy who's going to get you 6 receptions for 60, 70 yards and maybe a touchdown every week. If he doesn't get a touchdown, he's still going to get you double digits. In a flex spot, that's very, very respectable. And worst case scenario, you put him in your wide receiver 3 spot, you find something else for your flex. That's very respectable. And that's why those are your league winners when you go through round 6 through 10. That's why right there. But the difference between you and I is I actually draft for flex, and you just kind of find, you want to find what comes to you. And that's another strategy too.
Yeah, well, these guys, I was actually just doing some math here because we did our running back rankings and our wide receiver rankings, and we actually came up with 26 because we couldn't cut it down to 25 and 31 of each, so that's 57 names, if through a 12-man league, that's almost 5 rounds right there. And that's just that. So that's assuming nobody drafts a quarterback and nobody drafts a tight end, which I guarantee you there's going to probably see 5 quarterbacks and 3 tight ends go in that time frame. So there's eight spots on top of the 57 number. So you're at 60, so that's 5-6 rounds. That's 5 rounds that you have. And for me, that 6th round is where you almost have to take your flex, because your first 5 rounds, you want to lock up 3 wide receivers and your 2 running backs, unless, like I said, Josh Allen sitting there and your best running back's A.J. Dillon, then you take a Josh Allen or Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow or one of these guys. So that's the situation where you do that, but that's rare. Honestly, I don't like to do that. I like to wait on quarterbacks. I would, depending on the situation, you might push a guy up your board. You might push a running back or a wide receiver on your board, because quarterback-wise, I mentioned Joe Burrow. Derek Carr is a guy that, what's the difference going to be? A few hundred yards, on the season?
Well, maybe like 10 touchdowns, though.
Yeah, so it's not – but overall fantasy points throughout the season, the average is not going to be that much different. So for me, if you got to lock up your flex. So by round 6 or 7, you got to have your flex locked up.
Yeah, like you said, like it might be a 40 or 50 point difference between Joe Burrow and Derek Carr, something like that. 50 points over a 16-week season is only 3 points a week. So like you said, like that's not – sometimes that might be the difference, but most of the time it's not. Guys are going to put flexes in where, hey, I have the matchup, I have everything, I'm going to go off waivers, get my flex every week. And then you sit there and like, hey, this is the matchup because so-and-so did this against this team last week. I have the matchup. And then so-and-so gets 3.7 points. And you're just like, well, I had the matchup. I had, they did this against this team last week. Well, it's a different team. It's a different player. You can't do that. You want to go off. I go off averages. I look at quality touches, points per touch, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you go into the expert rankings like air yards and all that kind of shit. These actually will help you win leagues. And if you want a guy who has like a really high quality per touch, it's a guy like JD McKissick. And I bring him up because he is, to me, worth rostering in the top 10 rounds, because every time this dude touches the ball, he's getting 2 to 3 fantasy points per touch. Now, if he could find a way to up his touches to 10 to 15 points and he's getting 2, he can get you 25 points in your flex spot. Happened a couple times last year. When he played Atlanta, I think he got 30. So it's not going to happen every week. But if you can get an average of 10 to 12 to 15
10 rounds is a little risk for me, because I just said 5, you got to have your 3 starting positions or 5 starting positions locked up, and then you got to go flex, and then maybe even a bench guy. So that's 6, 7.
But you tell
So
me in round
7's
10.
down,
You
and
tell me in
then
round
8,
10 where you're going.
9. Then you got to go quarterback, tight end more than likely, and then round 10. I guess that's when you start taking flyers. But even then, he's like that's going to happen every once in a while if they get down because he's a solid pass catching guy. But splash in a pan for me, man. There are other guys at that point in time. We'll see. We'll see when the draft started coming around a little more often. We start getting some more mocks. But I mean, maybe it was the mock that I did today has got me thinking a little differently. But yeah, round 10 is a little steep for a guy like that. You could still get some of these other guys on the board.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to be how it falls. I mean, you're always going to find, Chase Edmonds might be sitting down that far. People just might drop on him and not want to pull the trigger on him.
I like him a lot more because he's in an offense that's honestly a pass first offense. They don't have a running back they can just hand it to like that. They got Raheem Mostert. Like you said, he's going to get hurt by week 3. So Chase Edmonds is going to get the ball. Even with a healthy Mostert, Edmonds is the pass catching guy. They had who's that guy last year? Myles Gaskin. He had the games where he did good last year were the games where he actually caught a lot of passes.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really his strength, though. I mean, if it is, he's not as good as Chase Edmonds at that role, and they brought him in for a reason. So I think that he's actually a solid pickup later.
Yeah, and I've always liked him. So I mean, I actually have him as a higher draft in like round 10. So I mean, if I'm looking at like round 7 or 8, he's definitely going to be in that range right there for me at least. Again, guys, it depends on how your draft is also set up, how your league is set up. We are a PPR league with 3 receivers. You might be a standard with 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and a flex, and you might not be in PPR. So if it's a non-PPR league, I mean, you're going to want to draft 3 running backs. Like running back becomes gold in non-PPR leagues. So then that's when you're looking at Nick Chubbs. You're looking at, Derrick Henry's. You want to go up and grab those guys in the first round, second round. And then third round, you're probably looking at, David Montgomery. You're wanting guys who are going to get volume in your flex spot. And that's non-PPR standard, 2, 2, and 1. That's how you're going to want to draft.
Yeah, and then you want to get out of that league and you want to join a league that's a little more exciting, that has a lot more points being scored, and that requires more managing, more involvement, stuff like that. PPR is just definitely the way to go.
But yeah, for the beginners out there, because I know a couple, I have a couple guys that I work with that are always, hey, Mike, what do you do here? What do you do here? What do you do here? And they rely on me every single week to literally manage their team for them. So there's some guys out there like that. And, if you're still in a league where it's non-PPR and it's very safe scoring, you're scoring 80 points a week, it changes. Things will change. Don't go out and draft, a guy that's only going to get 5 touches and 4 of those touches are pass receptions, because he's not going to score you very many points. So you have to know the difference of what kind of league you're in. You have to know your point scoring. Ours and most people that we know and most people out there are going to go off PPR rankings and have more than 2 receivers in their lineup. And, some even have double, like 2 flexes. Some have super flexes where they're playing quarterbacks. I mean, it depends. Super flex is the most retarded league to me. I would never put a quarterback in a flex. People who do that, I think it's really dumb. That's just it's not fun. Or 2 quarterback leagues, I'm not into it. But running back and receiver, that's where you make your bread. And there's more of those guys out there, so it makes it a little bit more competitive in your league. Some guy that drafts the top 2 quarterbacks, it just doesn't make fun. But let us know what you guys think as far as what kind of league you're in. What draft strategy you have, what draft strategy between me and BT you like more. Let us know what you guys have. And, we like the engagement. We like the stuff on Instagram. We'll post this on Instagram and see if we, let's get a following and all that kind of stuff. BT, you got anything to add?
No, I mean, like you said, I've helped guys out for years when it comes to fantasy, and that's ultimately why we started this thing. Is fantasy is what we do. We've won plenty of leagues, each of us, and that's why guys hit us up, is because we pay attention and follow this stuff. So, 12-man league, that's what we're in. PPR, that's how we do it. There are other ways to do it. And if you have a certain situation, like guys always ask me, who would you start, this guy or that guy? Those are going to be after we draft, and we're more than happy to help with all that and talk about all that. But at the end of the day, it's your money. It's your team. You got to trust your gut. It will easily tell you what we would do and everything. But at the end of the day, it's your money. You got to trust your gut. And the same when you're drafting, you got those. That's when you're going to win and lose the league. Ultimately, is on draft day. So you gotta, at that time when you're on the clock, settle down, make that pick, take the best guy on the board.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, yeah, that's gonna wrap up our flexes. Again, like BT said, like trust your gut. If you have any questions about who to draft, this guy or that guy, and you haven't followed our ranking show, go back and look at our rankings. We have done running backs and receivers so far. That should give you an idea of kind of who we would draft first. But yeah, coming forward, if you guys have hey, this guy or that guy to draft, this guy or that guy to put in, leave it in the comment below. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe below. Make sure that you see our videos as they're coming up. We post on Instagram, we post on Facebook, we're on Podbean, all across the podcast network there, and of course right here on YouTube. So we're checking it daily. We will respond to you personally. So we're just kind of getting going into fantasy, and let us know. And BT, go ahead and close this out, man. What do you got?
Yeah, man, like you said, subscribe, stay tuned. We got quarterbacks coming up here next. We'll probably get in that in a couple days. We got our quarterback rankings followed by tight ends, and then we got sleepers and mock drafts. We got all kinds of stuff coming up. So subscribe, stay tuned.